Hello and welcome to this SafeWork New South Wales webinar. The title of this session today is Work Health Safety Responsibilities and Influence, and this is one in a series of webinars specifically designed to help construction site supervisors to understand the importance of their roles and the major impact they have in maintaining safe and productive work sites. My name is Gary Colthorpe and I'm a Senior Inspector with SafeWork New South Wales, and I'll be co-presenting this session with Assistant State Inspector Angela McDonald. Thanks for joining us today, Angela.
Thanks, Gary. It's great to be here.
It certainly is. And just to break things up a bit today, Angela and I will alternate between us as we take you through this presentation. As inspectors, we certainly see the significance and importance of your roles every time we step onto a construction site. Wouldn't you agree, Ange?
Absolutely. We can often tell within the first few seconds of entering a site just how seriously a site supervisor takes their responsibilities for maintaining work health and safety on site.
That's exactly right. And we're really hoping that by the end of this webinar today, you'll have a real appreciation of the responsibilities and the influence you have in maintaining those standards. So let's make a start by first looking at the topics we're going to cover in this webinar. Firstly, let's look at what is a supervisor, or who can be a supervisor. Then we'll consider how do you supervise, particularly on a construction site, what's involved, and what are the practicalities in doing it. What are a construction site supervisor's health and safety responsibilities? What are you required to do by law? And finally, how can a construction site supervisor positively influence work health and safety on a work site? What exactly do you need to do? Well, recent studies have found that having a direct supervisor who is aware of the workplace risks and who's engaged in reducing them can significantly reduce worker injuries and incidents for all workers, including young workers, migrant and culturally and linguistically diverse workers, and labour hire workers. Supervisors play an extremely important role in creating and maintaining a safe working environment. And the conclusion was that there's no doubt that investing time and resources in supervision is a fundamental component of any truly effective injury prevention program. So let's look at who a supervisor is at a workplace. Well, who's likely to be a supervisor on a construction site with work health and safety responsibilities? Well, what we need to keep in mind is that anyone who instructs or directs workers as they carry out work is considered to be a supervisor. And someone who instructs less experienced workers is also a supervisor. So you can see that you don't actually need the word supervisor in your job title to be one. What this means is that there can be, on a typical construction site, a multiple number of supervisors. And we'll see later in this session that the work health safety legislation makes it clear that each supervisor has a duty to manage their health and safety to the extent they're able to influence and control it. And that's really important. That's a really important point. Being in a position to influence and control health and safety in the workplace. Okay. So we've just discussed that anyone who instructs or directs workers as they carry out work can be a supervisor. But on a typical construction site, there are a number of easily recognisable supervisory roles, including the principal contractor, the construction manager, you, the site supervisor, the site foreman, the superintendent, and also the subcontractors' supervisors. Angela's now going to take us through the next couple of slides relating to what the legislation says about a supervisor's health and safety responsibilities and what is the right level of supervision for workers. Thanks, Ange.
Thanks, Gary. So before we get into this next section, we've got a little bit of a disclaimer. So we're going to look at the key themes and the key clauses in the regulations and in the Act. However, we're not intending to read those word for word, and the intention is to give you some understanding for you to help understand what your role is and how you need to perform your duties under the Act whilst you're out on site. So we're going to paraphrase what the legislation says and call out those things that you really need to be aware of. In terms of legal advice, this is not legal advice, but we strongly suggest that you would have a look to go online and have a look at the WHS Act of 2011 and the WHS regulations of 2017 to actually further look at these in detail. So you certainly need to be aware, firstly, of Section 19, which is our primary duty of care. So the primary duty of care basically applies to what we refer to is a person conducting a business or undertaking, a PCBU. So for the purposes of this, we would call it, say, a business owner or an employer, that sort of thing. So the primary duty of care refers to a PCBU or the business owner, meaning that they have the responsibility to ensure the health and safety of all persons and all workers on their site. So that includes everybody that could be workers, employees, subcontractors, visitors, anybody that's on that site, and they have to look after their health and safety. They also need to ensure that workers are provided with information, instruction, training, and supervision as necessary to ensure that they're protected from being exposed to any work health and safety risk. So further on to this, particularly around the information, instruction and training, is Clause 39, which specifically calls out those particular elements. So in terms of talking to what that means, they need to consider when providing information, instruction and training to ensure that it's suitable to the workers. And that means that it's considering the nature of the tasks or the activities that's being undertaken, the nature of the risks that are involved in undertaking that work or those activities, and what those existing control measures look like, and to ensure that they're obviously, they've been managed on site. And the key part to this here is ensuring that that information is provided in a way that's readily understandable to workers. So readily understandable means something different to some people than what it would to others. So perhaps, Gary, you might like to see the SafeWork method statement with written down what those expectations and what needs to happen on site to ensure that health and safety. Somebody else may wish to see a diagram or have someone demonstrate this is how you should be undertaking that task safely. So readily understandable can mean many different things depending on what the experience and the skills of those workers are. So next we're going to look at Section 16 of the Act, which refers to more than one person having the same duty. So what that means is that more than one person can have the same duty and they must comply with that duty, even if somebody else has the exact same duty. It also means that the duty cannot be discharged to anybody else. So if you are a duty holder, such as a supervisor, and there are other supervisors on that site, you each still have the same duty and the same responsibility to ensure the work health and safety of those persons whilst you're undertaking your role, which means your control and influence over that task. So job descriptions may change, role descriptions and tasks that you may be involved in may change. However, as far as you have influence and control over an activity, that means that you must discharge your duty to ensure that health and safety. What should never happen is a supervisor should never say that I do not have responsibility for health and safety on site when they have a direct influence or control over a particular activity. And because, as we would know, supervisors often are also workers, they need to be aware, or you need to be aware, of what your duties are as a worker. So the good news is it's really simple. So for a worker, all you have to be doing is ensuring that you're taking reasonable care for your own health and safety, taking reasonable care to ensure that your acts or omissions do not negatively or adversely impact others in the workplace, and also to ensure that you're complying with any reasonable policy, procedure, or direction that's provided in the workplace, which could be things like following site rules and ensuring that you are wearing the right PPE and you have the right equipment to undertake tasks. And now we're going to have a look at what the right level of supervision is. So some things that are often asked of us is how much supervision is enough? How often does a supervisor need to be on site? And how accessible does the supervisor need to be? So we're going to talk now about some of the practicalities of how you can ensure that you are actually following those and what you need to consider to make sure that you're actually meeting those requirements. So generally, as we've spoken about, the person in control of the workplace who has that primary duty needs to ensure and determine that the right level of supervision is available for the work that's being carried out and also for the workers that are there. So their duty is to ensure that the work is carried out safely and that those work health safety requirements are being met. And that applies to all contractors, workers, visitors, as we've spoken about. And so when you're determining what is the right level of supervision, you need to consider these factors, which is the level of risk involved in the task or in the job, what the experience and skills are of the workers that are doing that task. And a brief example of that may be a very seasoned 30-year experienced crane operator versus a first year or a fourth year electrical apprentice. We're talking about different levels of skills and experience and competence, which would require very different levels of supervision to undertake various tasks. And lastly, we need to look at the existing controls that are in place and need to ensure that they're in place to make sure that we are preventing any incidents or illnesses from occurring. So effective site supervision generally means being able to provide direction, coordination, and oversight of the work practices that are taking place on site. So in order to make sure you're doing that, it's about being engaged. So it's monitoring the workplace, going out and having a look at what's happening, who's doing what, where are they doing it, and is that being carried out safely? Ensuring that the safe systems of work are being followed, and that then obviously includes that the work is being carried out as per the SafeWork method statement for that task. And also, supervisors need to be available to provide timely advice on what those work practices may be and to be able to respond to any work health and safety issues that may arise. They also need to ensure that they are in a position where they can cease work, so they can stop work where an issue is identified or an unsafe practice is taking place, and then monitor that and adjust those controls, implement new controls or change the systems of work and ensure that the workers are understanding of that before work then proceeds in order to ensure that we're preventing any work health and safety incidents, in which case the supervisor also then needs to ensure that they are responding in a very timely and appropriate manner to any emergency situations, incidents or illnesses that may occur. Again, I'm just going to touch base on that last point about ensuring from a supervisor's perspective that the workers are understanding of the tasks that they're going to be undertaking in a way that's readily understandable, as we mentioned. So Gary's now going to take us through how supervisors can positively influence work health and safety on site. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Ange. Yeah, let's look at the steps you should consider to positively influence health and safety on your work site. You can do this by asking yourself these questions. Are you a safety advocate? Do the workers on site see you as a safety advocate who considers health and safety on a daily basis? Do you intentionally promote health and safety? Do you talk about it openly and often? Do you lead by example? You can expect the workers on site are paying close attention to the standards of work health and safety that you practice and are making decisions about their own standards based on what they see you do. Are you consistent in your commitment to maintaining health and safety standards? You really do need to be consistent. Do you inspect safe systems of work in action in the workplace? If you receive a SafeWork method statement, for example, do you review it in consultation with the workers and then ensure that it's being followed in the workplace? If you answered no to any of these questions, you should be asking yourself the question, why not? As each of these elements has an impact on the health and safety of the workers that you supervise. Also ask yourself, do you identify hazards on site and investigate all health and safety issues, deliver toolbox talks on a regular basis, and undertake site inductions for anyone attending the work site? Do you consult with contractors, subcontractors and employees in relation to health and safety? Again, if not, why not? And finally, do you train workers before they do new tasks, ensuring that workers' performance meets the safety expectations and the site rules are followed? Do you undertake site walkthroughs and inspections with worker representatives, for example, and analyse your register of injuries? An injuries register can be an ideal place to determine what additional controls you need in the workplace. Each of these elements mentioned has an impact on the health and safety of the workers that you supervise. So to summarise some of the key messages we've discussed, supervisors play an important role in promoting and maintaining health and safety in the workplace. There's no doubt that a supervisor's words, actions and attitudes influence the worker's approach to health and safety. High levels of supervision also ensures that your systems and processes are followed correctly and helps to improve productivity and maintain safe systems of work. Angela is now going to take us through the final slides in this presentation and discuss where to find additional resources and how to get in touch with SafeWork New South Wales.
Thanks, Gary. So one of the additional resources that we have available to you is our podcast series, which we call Safety Casts. There's a whole range of safety casts, and some of these topics include working at heights, scaffolding and formwork, just to name a few, but there's very, very many more. These are undertaken by SafeWork New South Wales inspectors who discuss these topics, discuss some of the risks involved and the controls appropriate to these, and also provide you with some further information and references that you can go to get more information to use in your industry and to understand that better. As well as the Safety Cast series, we also have the additional webinars for this Site Supervisor series, which we would encourage you to engage with and to absolutely go and join in on those. These are great for toolbox talks as they've got really short, sharp messaging, which is really effective on site, and they're available online. They're also available on many media platforms, including Spotify and Apple Play. All you have to do is, in your search engine, just search for SafeWork Safety Casts and you'll find those in no time. There's also a large amount of guidance material that's available on our website. So that's on SafeWork New South Wales website. That material will assist you to understand what your responsibilities are further. It provides information specific to your industry, which allows you to maintain those high safety, work health and safety standards that we expect to see on site. We really encourage you to access and read through the information available on there. And in doing that, all you have to do is simply visit the SafeWork New South Wales website and type into the search engine that's available on there. And lastly is our Speak Up app, which we absolutely encourage everybody to download. The Speak Up app can be used for anybody, including yourself, to be able to notify us of any work health and safety concerns that you may have or have observed on site or elsewhere. And you can remain anonymous in reporting those to us. You can access this by the SafeWork New South Wales website or on Google Play or the App Store. Back to you. Thanks, Gary.
Thanks, Angela. So in wrapping up this webinar, we'd like to remind you that you can always contact SafeWork New South Wales on 13 10 50 to seek advice, to report a health and safety concern, or to speak to an inspector about a health and safety matter. Well, Angela, I believe that's a wrap, and thanks for joining us today, and thank you to everyone who attended. We really hope you found this information valuable.
Thanks, Gary, and thank you for participating and joining us today, and we hope to see you on site soon. Thanks.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.